Hi, everyone. This is Antonio Muniz. Welcome to the next episode of LatProXperience, where we talk about entrepreneurial success through the Latino lens. Today, we have another one of those amazing opportunities to have multiple people in the podcast here in LatProXperience. Today, we have the amazing Karla Carderera and Julian Gonzalez, who are co-founders, co-owners of UpFront CPA. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see you guys.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you for having us.
No,
Good to be here.
This is a conversation that we've had before, or similar to a conversation we had before, and we always talk like, we should do this on an episode of LatProXperience, just so other people can actually hear what we talk about, because I think there's great value in those conversations. So before we get started, because we've known each other for some time already, we know a little bit about each other. In a very short period of time, we've learned a lot from each other, I believe. And but not everyone who's connecting today has the same level of connection or understanding with Karla, with Julian, etc. So let's start there. Tell me, Karla, who is Karla? Let's start there. Who is Karla? Where you from? Why are you here? What's your a little bit about your background?
Yes. So my name is Karla Carderera. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, Sidra, Puerto Rico. I actually moved to Florida when I was 14 years old. So I actually went to high school and college here in Florida. I went to college at Berry University in Miami. As soon as I graduated, I moved back to Orlando. So I majored in business administration with a major in accounting. And I've worked as an accountant for over 20 years. It is something that I absolutely love to do. I definitely studied what I like to do. I love being an accountant. I've worked with different types of companies. I worked in the for-profit and not-for-profit world. I worked for Fortune 500 companies. My specialty is in general ledger and financial statement preparation. And like I said, I love being an accountant. I love Florida. I actually moved to Texas for 6 years because of my husband's job, but then we moved right back to Orlando. It's definitely home for us.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let me tell you something, because if I don't tell you now, I'm going to forget. A large percentage of the guests that we've had in LatProXperience who are from Puerto Rico, like you and I, arrived in the U.S. at age 15. That's the average. I arrived at age 15. You're 14. I mean, a ton of people came in at different generations, by the way. It doesn't mean that we're all the same age. It just so happens that that transition, that family transition, happened when they were between 14 and 16 years old. That's a tough time to do it. It was tough for me. I don't know about you, but we can talk about that a little bit later. Thank you, Karla. Julian, tell us a little bit about you, please.
Yeah. So funny you mentioned that, because I don't know, maybe some other life I was born in Puerto Rico, because I came out 14 myself.
There you go.
Well, not from Puerto Rico though, but from Venezuela. So yeah, so there's some kind of trend there. I think you're onto something.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, a little bit of my background. So yeah, I moved here. From Venezuela, and I came here right about the time I started high school. So I went to Miami. In Miami I did high school. I went to college. I went to FIU. I can't really say like Karla that my first love was accounting. I think accounting was something I fell in love with, I guess, later. My first love, I would say, was going to be finance. That's where I graduated out of FIU. I wanted to perhaps one day be in New York and work at a hedge fund or, be in Wall Street. But, life happens, and I figured I started doing work I got my first job here in Miami, down in Miami at a bank. And I was doing more accounting work than finance, and that's when I kind of I would say my expertise kind of went from being more of in the finance side to the accounting. And yeah, so fast track all the way to to maybe, I would say, I've been doing accounting for, I would say, way over about 15 years now. I've been working in, I guess I would say I did sort of a mix where it was in investment, finance, and accounting, because I was doing investment accounting. So basically investment accounting is if you work at a hedge fund or a private equity, you get to see both worlds where you're seeing all the investing, but you're doing the accounting side, which for me has always been very, very exciting. And then with that also comes the part where you see, part of my job, or, the biggest part of my job has always been figuring out, I would say maybe the right way to say it is loopholes, right? How can I utilize capital the best way and save taxes at the same time? I've been always doing that for, the wealthy. And that's when about, but for the time I've been doing that, I've also kind of developed that, intuitive kind of, I wanted to see if we can utilize at least some of the same strategies to the normal guy, right? To the average guy, the guy that is not making $1 million a year, but is making, I don't know, maybe 50, 100, 150, 200, So, because more times than not, those are the people that are paying more out of, in terms of percentage in taxes, which I kind of find unfair a lot of the time. So that's what it kind of motivated me to, basically, do my own thing and see where I can help the little guy save on taxes more.
So crazy. And, thank you for sharing that part of your story, because hablando la gente se entiende, right? We have to have these conversations to understand motivation, to understand the mission, to understand the purpose of why people do what they do. And have just in the first few minutes of having this conversation with you guys, this is not the first conversations we've ever had, but even in the first few minutes, I already learned something new. And I already see other points of connection. And that's what you're looking for when you're having a conversation, points of connection. And I already talked about, Karla's upbringing and Sidra, by the way, I'm going to be in Caguas on Friday on the Sidra side, right? Like if I can throw a rock I won't, but I can throw a rock to Sidra and I'm that close, right? It's in the countryside of Caguas, the country area of Caguas, Cañaboncito, Hormiga, that kind of area. So I'll be there on Friday. So I did not know that was your hometown. That's not my home. My hometown is Mayagüez, but my wife's family is from Caguas. So that was a point of convergence and a point of connection. And I think that's a lesson to all of us as entrepreneurs and business owners. Having a conversation, find points of connection. So that's one. The fact that you said I study what I study and I'm doing what I study, basically, and you love what you're doing. You went to accounting programs in university with the intention of practicing accounting, and you're practicing accounting and you love accounting. That's so rare. Okay.
Yeah.
That's so rare, but it's so fantastic when you find somebody who does that, who has that, because that professional is going to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to get the thing done right for the client. I'm not going to bore you with my side of that story, but I think that there's a point of convergence. And then you hear Julian say, "Hey, I'm not from Puerto Rico, but guess what? I came in to the U.S." Man, these are not coincidences. We need to look at, as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we need to look at points of convergence and intentionality. There was nothing coincidental about that migration in Julian's case and our relocation as Puerto Ricans. We don't migrate, by the way. We relocate. We don't go through an immigration status to come to the U.S. Just to give a little bit of information to that audience who perhaps still does not understand the relationship between Puerto Rico and the U.S. But anyway, different story for a different conversation. But here's what I like about, what Julian said. He said, I did not fall in love with this before because my intention was different, right? I wanted to be in the institutional banking. I call that institutional banking. What you described is not, I'm going to go to the bank on the corner and maybe get a loan for something. No, these are banks that you just don't walk into. It's a different environment. And one thing that you said, Julian, that I never heard before: investing accounting. I've heard investing, I've heard accounting, but I never heard investing accounting. And what that triggered for me, that perhaps can be of value for everyone who's connecting here today, is I look at accounting as the past. Investing accounting is the future. So you're looking at the financial aspects of a possible investment that, and you need projections. The person who's going to throw down some money needs projections of what the future is going to look like to decrease the uncertainty, increase the certainty, so they can, pony up the dollars. Did I say that right? Or am I just kind of speaking like a non-accountant?
No, that's right. So, because, being in accounting, you get kind of like, it's the same, you get kind of like the best of both worlds, right? Because you said it exactly right. When you think of, like, let's say traditional accounting, or let's say normal accounting, you're always looking past, you can be up to date as much as possible, but you're always, let's say, playing catch up, right? You do what you do, and then you just do the books after, right? What I liked about what I was doing, or what I've always, or what really got me to this point is, when you're doing investments, you have that mix of you got to look at, because you use the past to make a plan for the future. And you get to kind of mix both, right? So you would look at, let's say, past performances, and then we make a track for the future, right? So that's what I like accounting. That's what I like. That accounting part was what I liked, what I was doing before. And it's basically what we're doing here at UpFront CPA is we're super, kind of bringing that point home that, if you want to stay up to date, it has to be a regular thing. If you're looking at just going to see your accountant in March and April only, that is only going to get you so far. I mean, that is a super reactive way to look at things. Especially when you have, if you're an employee and you have a W-2, then it makes sense, right? I mean, you already have you already have your withholding taxes, probably paying your estimates right. I mean, there's really no need for have a regular accounting. But if you have your own business, you're making, you may or may not be paying yourself right, but you don't know that. You think that you're doing things right, but you're not sure. I mean, it just makes absolute sense to make accounting more of a regular thing rather than like a reactive thing that you just come in March and April and you're trying to, not prepare. What I like to say is, run a marathon when you haven't even prepared for it. That's what I like to call it.
Totally get that. I totally get that. And I want to get Carla's perspective on this as well, because that's the number, as a business solutions consultant, that's what I see the most is, I have an accountant. Yes, I see him or her in March because I'm a good customer. I don't wait till April. But that's why most people believe it's a reaction. It's something that you react to. I did a bunch of things over the last 11 and a half months. Now I'm going to share that with my accounting or tax professional and let him and her tell me what I owe or figure out a way to not owe as much. That's really the simplest version of how business owners, entrepreneurs utilize or leverage their accounting relationship. That's better than nothing, but it's not the right way to do it. And it really, I'm going to get to why UpFront CPA shortly, but I want to get Carla's perspective on where we are at this point in the conversation.
Yeah, so what we always tell our clients is you have to be proactive. You have to plan ahead. Because if you wait, like Julian said, and like you just said, Antonio, until the end of the year, it's too late by that time. It's too late in order for us to be able to help you. What is done, it's done. We can only help you for the future. But if you see your accountant, and I would advise at least quarterly, at least, twice a year, but at least I think every 3 months is the best way, because that way you get to make changes or plan on time, because things change. Maybe the first 2 quarters of the year is not going to be the same as the last 2 quarters of the year. We like to see trends. We like to see how you did previous year. So it's not only, again, even when we as accountants analyze your data, we even go back a year or two to see what the trends, because every business is different and every business peaks on different times of the year. Might depend on how the economy is doing in the country. So there's a lot of different factors that affect each business. So we like to see that as a whole. But we always say, and I honestly, until I became an entrepreneur, I didn't realize that small businesses did this, that they did not see their accountant until it was time to do their taxes, or until they were in trouble. A lot of people come to us when they get a letter from the IRS. And that's exactly what you want to avoid. That's exactly why we say you have to be proactive. You can't always be reactive, because then by that time, we might be able to help you, but we could have helped you along the way.
And I think that, that's true of a lot of the key components of running a business, right? I would rather make small adjustments along the way than go down the wrong path for a long period of time, and then have to make a major correction that I can impact people, impact my cash, impact my sanity, the level of stress. So we're aligned in that thinking, and part of the value that we're bringing through this through this conversation today is to reemphasize the need to do this on an ongoing basis, to have a relationship with an accounting firm on an ongoing basis. If success leaves clues, right? Look at what the large companies do. Do they wait all year to do this? Do they wait till April or March to say, hey, Julian, Karla, this is what I did. I made $22 million. I think I spent $18 million. Can you figure something out so I don't have to pay taxes on that? Does $4 million? I'll see you later. That they don't do that. They have monthly P&L, profit and loss reconciliations. Mm-hmm. They have monthly cash flow assessments. They have, internally they do it every day, but really monthly, where are we? What's the cash flow situation? What are the capital investments coming up? Do we need to hire people? Do we have the money to hire people? How does line of credit looking like? The financial blood flow of your business. And a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they look at accounting, including myself in the beginning. This just tax prep for my business. And there's a lot more to it. And what Julian said earlier is like, here's my background. I did this kind of stuff, this kind of analysis, this kind of work for people that had the financial horsepower to do this on an ongoing basis. And they saw this as part of the cost of doing business. Our community, our entrepreneurial small business owner community, which is 2/3 of the economy in the US, we still don't think that way. By and large, we still don't think that way. But it's up to us, and this is what I like about what you're doing up front, and we're going to talk in detail about that, is that we have a similar view. I brought what I've learned from corporate America, from engineering, from running my own businesses and making a lot of mistakes along the way, but finding the solutions, bringing it to my business of business consulting. And my view is I'm bringing big business resources to small business operators, that these solutions already exist. And we face the same challenges and liabilities as the large corporations. We just do it with much smaller budgets. But it doesn't mean that we can ignore them. It means that we need to address them a little bit differently and more cost efficiently. And thanks to technology and innovation and a lot of different things, a lot of the tools that were only available to big companies are also available to small businesses today. But you have to be in the room where it happens, right? You got to be in the room where the resources are. And that's what UpFront CPA is an example of that. So let's talk about that. We heard about Karla's background. Hey, I went to school, studied this stuff. I love it. I work in corporate America, Fortune 500 companies. I love it. Fantastic. We got Julian. Hey, listen, I didn't fall in love with it right away, but I was looking at finance first and looking at kind of forward thinking investments, that kind of stuff. I started learning the accounting piece or getting more familiar with the accounting piece. I've been practicing accounting for 15 years. Money is my life. I've been helping people who have the horsepower, the financial horsepower to do this. But I want to help. I want to bring that to the middle, right? To the middle market, small to mid-size businesses. So is that why UpFront CPA was born?
Yeah, so I think so. Yeah, so, I think, upfront CPA definitely was born out of basically kind of, I would say part of it by chance. And then part of it was, it's just one of those where like, luck is really when, effort meets opportunity. I think that's the saying, really how it goes. But that's kind of how we met up, because the story is, when I was in corporate America, I was running my own accounting, operations, like on the side. I was helping, like, let's say friends, family, everything related. Like I was helping them with basically like tax planning. I was like a tax planner on the side as I was in corporate America. And I always wanted to, for me, it started like as an idea of, eventually I want to take off and do my own thing. But, when you're in corporate America, it's difficult. It's sort of it's a deal that is, I would say, kind of hard to get out. So it's hard because, you get used to making a living in a certain way. So, you're comfortable. You have your paycheck every 15th and every 30th. And, everything is very departmentalized. So, you just worry about your thing, right? If I'm just doing investment accounting, that's all I have to worry about. The accounting for my clients, right? When you become an owner, let's say, and I noticed that when I was doing my side gig, or, when it was my side gig at the time, it was, you don't just worry about your clients. You also have to worry about marketing. You also have to worry about, your human resources. Like, do I need to, is there anything else I need to do? So you have to wear so many hats, right? Where you don't incorporate when you're in your steady job. So it's a more of a difficult proposition than it looks like. You obviously, for me, I always had that desire to, for me, it was always like, I like basically the independence that it brings to own your own business, but at the same time, you have all these other things on the side, and you're like, you kind of put a stuff, you're afraid to make that change, right? So, but I always had that in the back of my mind. I always planned for that to happen, even though I was, kind of always, on the fence for it. So, and then, but as the time passed, it just became more and more clear to me that was kind of like my calling. I was enjoying I wouldn't say I was having a hard time with the corporate America, but I had, my long-term vision was not there. I didn't see myself 10 years, 20 years down the road doing the same. So that's when I became more and more serious. What was my vision? And what did I need to, I just kind of I sat down and I basically made a plan, a 10-year plan. And I said, okay, so this is what I want and this is what I need to do to get there. One of the things I realized while I was planning this was I consider doing it on my own. But it's always good to have a partner. It's always good to have someone there with you in the trenches, I like to say, right? It's the divide and conquer type of mentality, right? And it's also, and I guess in a way, it's easier to make when you're making that jump from corporate America. If you have somebody that is going through, let's say, the same thing, it also makes it easier. Because it's easier to bounce ideas and to plan. When both are in a similar situation. So, when I met Karla, so she was kind of like in the same place. She was also, on corporate America, was always wanting to do her own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And really just by chance, we decided, let's give this a chance. So we both have the background. We both want to help clients. We both want to, and more than clients, we want to help the middle guy. That was kind of like my big thing, right? So it's not make your typical accounting firm where it's just how you describe, I'm just going to meet my accountant once a year. It was more like, let's provide value for our community, right? From my experience with friends and family, and when I was doing this as a side gig, it was everyone's overpaying, everyone's afraid of the IRS, everyone's going to what I like to call, accountants, that some tax preparers that will say, okay, you have to at least pay a certain amount so that the IRS doesn't come after you, which I thought it was just really silly thing to look at your tax situation.
Yeah.
So, out of that, we both kind of had the same vision. We came together, and basically that's how UpFront CPA was formed.
So, Carla,
Yeah.
but did this happen naturally? Did you already know each other? Tell me your perspective. When somebody
No.
asks, it's like when somebody asks my wife how we met, she has her version, and I have another version. And I tell her that, you want to hear the truth now? Okay, listen to me.
Here's a real story. No,
That's right. That's right.
No, so actually, very different than Julian. On my end, I became an accountant, and I thought I always was gonna work for a corporation. I thought I always was gonna be an employee. I never envisioned that I wanted to be on my own and become an entrepreneur. That was never my thing. But then when COVID hit in 2020, like a lot of people, my company shut down, and I went straight into part-time job. My salary was cut in half. Everything was shut down. Thank God my husband kept working, but still we needed to make extra money at that time. So that's when a lot of small businesses were going through the PPP, applying for the PPP loans, and a lot of businesses realized that they didn't have correct financial statements, small businesses, right? In order to be able to get the help that the government was giving at that time. So I had friends and family that started reaching out, seeking my help to get them caught up with their accounting. And I was like, but why is your accounting not caught up? Like, what are you doing? How do you do your books? How do you do your accounting? And I heard all kinds of different stories. And then that's when I saw the need, first of all. That's when I said, oh my gosh, why are small businesses not treating themselves like they are a big business, like corporations? It was shocking to me. So I started doing that on the side. So I had my part-time corporate job, but then I was doing accounting on the side. And that's when I started thinking about it. I was like, oh, wow, this is actually something that I can pursue, something that I can do on my own. I have the experience, I have the knowledge. I can definitely help. But like Julian said, I didn't want to do it on my own. Same thing. I wanted to share responsibility. I wanted to have somebody to ask questions and think, and and the way I saw it to grow, to help the business grow, I need that backup. We need help. And just by chance, so Julian has a son that plays baseball. I have a son that plays baseball, and they used to practice together. And then Julian's wife and my husband took the kids to baseball practice one day, and they started talking. And then Eileen said to my husband, Rafael, so what does your wife do? And so he told her. And then Eileen was like, oh, my husband, same thing. And then to make the long story short, they got us together. Wow. So it was Julian's wife and my husband's the ones that actually introduced us. And to be very honest, at the beginning, I was like, I just, not that I didn't want to meet Julian, but I just didn't prioritize it at that time. I'm like, I'm doing my own thing. I'm busy, this and that. Sure, we'll do it. But they were very persistent. And sure enough, one day we're like, okay, yes, let's have coffee. And then that's when I met Julian. And we started talking, we started sharing ideas. And I was like, oh, wow, this is, I think, we shared the same thoughts. We wanted the same goal. At the end, we had the same goals. And I was like, okay, there's this person that I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But this is somebody that I can do business with. I just had the feeling.
Wow.
And we went with our guts.
That's so crazy. And knowing both of your spouses, I can see them pushing because they move faster. They're people who do not move slowly. Eileen doesn't move slowly. Rafael doesn't move slowly. And they see maybe a couple of steps ahead than anybody else around them. So they're like, no, this is going to happen. And so that's a great story. I'm telling you, this is another reason why people need to talk to each other. Be human, talk to people, be real. That's what you see. You find, uncover, or discover opportunities because this would not have happened any other way. It would not have happened. And you know what I like, and I don't know that I've ever told you this, but what I like about your partnership is that you're not clones. You're not the same thing. And when I see small businesses who say, well, I'm going to do business with my boy, we've known each other since we were in high school. The reason that you're still friends since high school is because you're pretty much the same thing. We like who we are and we like people who validate who we are. So I see partners who are exactly the same thing. Oftentimes that works. A lot of times it doesn't work because you have two of the same, And there's greater value when you bring different skills, different experiences, different personalities to the partnership because you check each other, You say, well, I don't know, that's crazy. That's a little out there, Julian. And Julian says, but Karla, let me show you the vision, And then with trust, you make a decision. But if you're both the same, you're both crazy, you're going to do a lot of crazy things. If you're both conservative, you're not going to move very far, So great. Thank you for sharing that. And so one was out of the way that I interpret what you both of you share. One was, this is my vision going forward. I know that I'm not being fulfilled where I am on a long term, like Julian was saying. Karla is like, there's a need. And I didn't know that need existed. I can fill that need. This is it. I can do this. So I'm more of the, holy crap. In my mind, I thought it was going to be, I was going to have my own gig at some point. I understood that early on in my career, but I was pushed into it. I went through 2 massive layoffs inside of 5 years. And I said, I'm not going to go through this again, period. So that was my push. It wasn't a gentle nudge. It was like a push to do something different, to get something different. So UpFront CPA launches on what year?
2020.
So I think it was in December 2022 officially UpFront CPA launched.
Okay.
Yeah.
December 2022. So what happens next? So okay, you say, oh wow, this guy, Karla met Julian met Karla. This is pretty cool. We have an idea. Let's go. So what did you set out to do? Why? I know what each other's motivation was, but what did you set out to do together with your accounting firm? What was the mission?
Yeah, so, it's interesting because, and I think this happens to most businesses where, you have an idea, you put that, and you got to put that idea into test, right? You got to test your idea. And then part of a business success is, it's, you gotta try different things. You gotta, you have to basically go through the unknown, right? You have to step into, maybe, give things a chance, right? So in our case, we wanted to create something like we wanted to do an accounting. We wanted to offer accounting, but we wanted to offer value more than accounting, right? But, for us to have success, we have to basically our clients or our prospective clients have to see the value in what we're offering. We knew we were bilingual. So, one of the things I noticed was like, there's a ton of CPAs out there, but not a lot of them are bilingual. So, in our community, we see accounting differently, especially when you consider like a CPA. I couldn't really tell that in our Latin community, we prioritize, let's say, a CPA versus a tax preparer. Sometimes we don't see the difference. I would even maybe dare to say that it's just, we're looking maybe at the cheapest option. And we think that exactly what you described earlier is, we just, we find the one guy, we find whatever choice, we wait till the end, through March, April, show up, give them what we have, and whatever costs me the least, I will call that a win. Now, there's so many problems that come into mind with that strategy, and many people have basically kind of been the victims of that strategy, which is, your books are a mess. You end up, because at the end of the day, what a lot of people don't know is you're responsible for your own taxes at the end of the day. You can have a tax preparer do some magical work that, that you may or may not have been aware of. But at the end of the day, the IRS is going to come after you. In that letter that the IRS is going to have your name on it. They're not going to go talk to the tax preparer. They're going to come to you. So, when people are trying to do this, let's say loopholes, because loopholes are okay, but, I can't tell you how many people have come to us and said, okay, so this is what my business is. This is how much I want to pay in taxes. Like, it's not a question, it's not a conversation of what are the best strategies, how much will I owe, what can we do? It's okay. So in my mind, I won't pay more than an X amount on taxes. And, obviously, that's a strategy that a lot of people use, especially, and, it's clearly not the best way to go through things, especially, if you are serious about your business, if you want to, because let's say, what's the question that you ask yourself as a business person? No, what should be your number one thing is, what do I want to get out of this, right? What's my end strategy? And, usually if you're serious about your business, what you want to do is maybe you want to grow it, right? So there's a timing thing. You may want to, let's say, grow it real quick and get out. Or maybe you want to do like a long-term thing, or maybe even like a legacy business where you want to create something for your kids, your grandkids, whatever the strategy is. But you've got to know that ahead of time. And if you're not doing your book right, or if you have that mentality where I'm just paying an X amount of taxes, you're pretty much putting you're not gonna be able to materialize that dream. Because, if at some point you want to sell your business and you've been doing your taxes in let's say, in not a so efficient way, or not in a way that a normal person would look at it and say, wow, this looks right. Or what I'm seeing in the taxes is not what you have in the business. You're not going to be able to sell it right. You're going to have problems figuring out the valuation for your business. So, and that's just one of the problems that could have. You could also have the IRS come after you. And then, if you have an audit, how do you and you just decided to pay a certain tax amount out of the blue, the IRS is going to come to you with explanation. So your explanation cannot be, okay, I just figured that, I don't know, just to give you an X amount of money, just an X amount, I just figured that $10,000 would be enough. You cannot say that to the IRS, right? Because if everybody said that, then, that would be, the paying taxes would be optional. And in our case, unfortunately, it's not optional. But yeah, so there's so many things that go into that, but going back to the initial thought, which is why we did this, is we wanted to provide value. We wanted to educate, our community, and then we wanted them to save taxes, but save it the right way, right? Create, have your books clean. That would be the first thing, make sure that your business is up to date with, monitor your cash flow, make sure you can cover your expenses. Just as we, start with that. And then from there, we start growing, a strategy so that you can, maximize your profits and at the same time, put some money for retirement. Save some money, make it, have some investments that benefit you, when it comes to, paying taxes at the end of the day. There's so many strategies that you can use that can actually offset, gains. So those are little things that I wanted to prioritize my clients. But, the biggest challenge is, have your clients see the benefit of that. So that's how UpFront CPA had, I would say, the first challenge, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's been, a good process because we know we have a good product. We know we can save our clients and money and taxes and all that. It's educating our clients. So this has been kind of like what UpFront CPA has been most focused on.
Yeah. And to add to that, also what I've learned is a lot of entrepreneurs don't look at accounting as they see it as something that they can save on, not like as an investment to their business. So for example, and a clear example would be if you need legal advice, you're going to go to an attorney. If you need dental work, you're going to go to a dentist. So why do people feel like when they need accounting advice or tax advice, they can say, no, it's something that I will do myself to save money and that end. And that is just, it's wrong. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be spending a lot more money if you don't do things correctly from the beginning. Accounting, we went to school for years to study accounting. We have experience for years. So there's certain specifications that you need to know that are important in your books. It's just not about revenue and expenses and net income. There's other things. There are assets, there are liabilities. There's a lot of payroll. A lot of people think, oh, I can do payroll on my own. That's easy. Well, not necessarily. And if you make mistakes, it's really hard to fix those mistakes. And those mistakes are very costly. So I wish people would really think about, doing accounting correctly, doing your taxes correctly as an investment to your company, not as an expense that they want to save on.
This has been super, super valuable. I hope that people are taking notes just like I'm taking notes. Whenever I have professionals in front of me, you always see me with a pen and paper. I'm always taking notes.